Yay!
What happened to your name tag, Keith? It was a little bit longer before.
It fell off.
Oh, it was so heavy it just fell
So
off.
heavy it fell off.
Okay. Hey, Mike, how you doing, buddy? I see Mike's on here. All right. Well, Dad, you want to do the roundabout to make sure everyone's working properly?
I'm in the process of doing that now. YouTube's running just fine.
Facebook, I'm on the right tab. Hi, Mike.
Facebook is running 5x5, and then that silly Twitch thing.
Hello. People are popping in.
I'm going to address a few things real quick. Hey, we're not going to talk really about much else, but Bullet Wordy 5 today, Blood and Fury, and the core rules. I will take some questions at the end, so if you tolerate us that long, I will try to answer anything that I may not have answered already. As you know, Devin and Keith played a very quick, short game. Now, what people don't realize, Devin had a hot mic last night. And right before play, he was, I guess, taunting Keith a little bit, and we had this.
Prepare to meet your horrible doom!
I was hoping that didn't get recorded. So.
You got to be careful with a hot mic.
Yeah, I know.
That's what the red light's for.
Red light? What red light? There's no red light.
Okay, and I'm just going to say hello to everybody, so I don't have to keep checking this list, but hello, Richard, and Facebook user, whoever you may be. Okay.
Yeah, I don't know what has happened. The last couple times we've done a show, it will say Facebook user, but when we go to the Facebook, it'll actually tell us who it is. I don't know why it doesn't shift the name over. So I'm going to have to dig into that and try to find out why it's not pulling the name. Because
it's the red light district. I can understand that.
Well,
we need a new SALT agreement.
Last week,
the names.
The funny thing is, this last week when the Facebook user popped up and we kind of just glossed over it, I think it was Jeff Newell who was actually, and so we didn't actually get a chance to give a shout out to Jeff when he popped in.
But it's not Jeff today.
I don't know. I'm looking at the.
I wanted to say hi to him.
I'm looking at the Facebook streaming, but it's not telling me.
He's got his counter now. His fame is secure.
He is a leader of men.
In Lock and Load, leader in World at War.
Yeah. Although the Lock and Load has the nice artwork. We have his rank pin in World at War.
All right, guys. What we're gonna do is, as you know, a week from tomorrow, the Game Found, which is what we're using to do our crowdfunding, will be launching our Blood and Fury game. There's been some videos. There is also a draft of the site, which I'm going to tell you is probably about 95% exactly what's going to be released. So if you want to look at that early, get an idea what's going on, it's all there. Including the new videos that Keith and Devin made last night. We will be making some new videos. We do know the mic was having little problems. We're going to blame the Soviets. It seems to be the thing of the day. So
their communications equipment was not really working that good last night. Even though I was the one playing the Soviets, my dice weren't working real well.
But you got
the check was in the mail.
Balance going there.
All right, so can be subject to bribes too.
And it looks like that's Uwe, who's our Facebook user.
Oh, great. Okay, I just sent him some new artwork. So.
All right, so you know what, Keith? We're gonna ask you. Got anything you want to ask us? If you had a chance to watch the videos, if you have anything in general you want to know, let's start the questions rolling.
And it's okay to ask again what was on the videos, because that gives me rehearsal. Although if you see me kind of stare at them, I'm probably bringing up a PDF of what, the list there. So everybody knows about my terrible memory.
Terrible memory? What are you talking about?
What? Who are you?
Is it short-term memory issues you're having, or is this just
no? It's just I need more rehearsal than most people, and I have a lot of stuff in my head that I don't even want to talk about.
See, that's why I just tip my head over and let the unimportant stuff fall out.
Right? Yeah. It's like the calories falling out of broken cookies. There's no calories in broken cookies.
Okay, the winner for the first question is right there for you.
Oh, multiple units in a hex get fired on. Which save is used, and who decides which save to use? So when you're attacking, you basically get your choice of target. So if there's 2 units in that hex, you're going to choose which. Now, if they're 2 different defense types, if one's heavy armor and one's a soft target, you need to choose whether you're going to use HE and affect the soft target, or whether you're going to use AP and affect the heavy target. Depends on what you fire it with. Did that answer that question?
Well, there's so many aspects to that. Is it using normal fire? What if you have overflow? Say you're firing at, let's say, one of the 30 millimeter high explosive rapid fires that you were talking about yesterday. You knock out the light unit, but then there's a heavy armor unit underneath it. What about artillery? Artillery strikes all units in the hex at the same time.
You got to learn to answer the question that's asked. I thought it was much simpler than that.
Your answer was very simple. However, I know how some of these people think when they ask their deep dive questions.
It was asked in good faith, and I answered in good faith. And I'm serious though. If it's not the answer, then just type another comment and say Keith's out of his mind. Devin was right.
All right. Here's the next question.
Go over the new defensive bonus dice. Oh, that's a great question.
Yes.
So, and I hope you're enjoying Harper's Ferry, by the way. It's a beautiful place. So the basic idea is that your armor save for when you're heavy armor or when you are light armor is going to be, it's a number. It's going to be like a 5 or 6 usually, but sometimes it's a 6 for light armor, let's say. And if you're in woods, and the way it was originally, you would get 1 extra die, but you'd roll that second die against the 6. But if there were an infantry in there, or even a heavy armor in there, who, heavy armor with their save of, say, it was 5, or infantry who takes it from the terrain, and terrain is always a 5, do they have a better defensive bonus than the light armor, which it's more a question of visibility and cover than it is anything else. And it's just as tough to pick out a light armor as it is to pick out a Leo 2 or the infantry. So we're kind of shortchanging the terrain bonus for the light armor a bit, and people basically brought this to our attention. The team looked at it. The team started playing it without telling me. And then they brought it to my attention. I'm like, well, that's kind of obvious. So the idea is that when any defensive bonus, anything that's you had that list of the die roll bonuses for defense, your armor is whatever your armor roll is for that 1 die or whatever number of dice it happens to be. But any defensive bonus, and that's terrain, concealment, whatever you can think of that's on that table there, that I can't think of all at once at the moment, but that you're going to roll a 5 or a 6. So we gave you some green dice, just sort of, that's the question, why the green dice? So the green dice are for that. So let's say I have, my M901 with a defense value of its light armor, it's a 6. It's sitting in a woods, so it's getting 2 dice. But the first die is his armor. So he's going to roll that, that's a regular color, roll that, and if he gets a 6, he gets a save. But the second die is for the woods. So he rolls a green die, just to remind him that it's a terrain, it's a defensive bonus. It could be terrain, in this case it is. There, you roll a 5 or 6. So the green dice basically is a reminder to you that these dice are all 5 or 6. Now, Devin and I, when we were playing the game yesterday, there are many situations where, especially when you're firing at like heavy armor, where your defensive bonus, your save value already is 5. So you fire at your T80. It's got 4 dice to make 5. It's sitting in a city. It gets another die. Now it's 5 dice to make 5. You don't really need to roll the green die with that. But it's for situations where occasionally you'll have a different save value than you will for the defensive bonus. But all of the defensive bonuses, in other words, if it's not coming from the unit, if it's not the armor save value, all of the defensive bonuses that get added are going to be 5s or 6s. Just like soft targets get 5s or 6s for everything. It is still, you're still subject to maximum defensive bonus for heavy and light armor. You're only going to get a 2 extra dice. So, like if you're in the woods and you're concealed and
you're being fired at by wire guided missiles, we had one rolled last night that could have been +4 defensive dice.
Right.
There were just so many modifiers.
Right. It's like +4, but because it was heavy armor, it was like it could only take 2, and that's intentional. That worked out really well, actually. I think it was still 6 dice to make.
Yeah, it was still something silly.
So I hope that answered your questions on that. It's not a difficult thing. It's a subtle thing. There are some people who ask, can you use it in Storming the Gap? Absolutely. You can use it in Volume 1. It is part of the core rules now. It just sort of makes sense. And that's what people were coming to us going, this makes sense doing it this way. I'm like, yeah. It was just a subtle little tweak. So we hope you guys like it.
And next one for you. Hold on. Hey, Chet, how you doing?
You mean Storming the Gap and Blood and Fury? I'm going to say, without thinking about it, well, yes, that's sort of the intent.
Well, let me put it this way. Maybe he might mean both games. You can merge both games. There is a scenario that lets you do that. We'll get into that later.
Right.
If you mean you can use the 2.2 rule set, the core rules are always the base plate of anything else we're doing. I mean, the basic rule of thumb is the core rules are your starting point. Module rules or companion rules override base rules, and scenario rules override
everything
else, basically.
So to answer the merge question, let me count the ways. There's lots of different ways you can merge and use the components from both games together. Number one is the main maps are geomorphic. If you match up a long side with another long side, it's going to match. It doesn't matter whether it came in Blood and Fury or whether it came in Storm and Steel and moving down the line. If you line up on the short side, it'll line up. Your roads and your rivers will line up. Now, Defense of Frankfurt, those 8 maps, they are also geomorphic. It's just the one configuration that you fight the battles that the scenarios are made on, because that one configuration is an actual piece of terrain in the Fulda Gap. But you can use those maps with everything else. So now you've got 8 more maps. Now, the Minden maps that are coming out with the Operation Red Gauntlet that we're going to offer, those 8 maps are semi-geomorphic. When you put them in the historical configuration, if you will, the actual terrain configuration of Minden and its environs, the interior seams are not geomorphic. That allowed us to close up some lines of sight that wouldn't be normal, basically. But the outside edges of each map, and again, it might be one long, one short, it might be one short, depending on where it is in that 8 configuration, those are geomorphic. So you could actually tack the Defense of Frankfurt map next to and have 16 map scenario, and then you could add on. So that's the whole point to the geomorphics, but we're reserving the 8 map configurations from now on. We're going to do them like Minden, where the interior seams are not geomorphic, but the outside are, so that you can still get use out of them. And you can match them all up if anybody wants to do a 32 map scenario down the road, if you can reach the middle of the map from there. So that's one way. It was with the maps. With the counters, you're going to get similar color bands. We reuse the color bands, but in one game it might be you've got orange BMP1s as the battalion, and in the other it might be orange. I'm going to pick one out because I don't remember exactly. Say it's T80s for the sake of argument. So now you can cross attach. So now you could have your battalion, your 4 companies or 3 companies in orange, and cross attach a T80, and now you don't have to use a Scratch Force card. You can use one of the orange cards or the other, and that's going to be throughout the series. Now, we're not trying to make, in other words, generally speaking, when we reuse them, they're going to be different equipment rather than the same equipment. Now, it's not always going to be something that you want to put together, but a lot of times it's usually a question between mechanized infantry and armor. But as we get into more specialized things, purple is usually recon or paratroopers. We also have teal for paratroopers. So you'll see there's certain patterns. The helicopters, we call it helicopter orange because it's a really rich orange. That's always going to be the helicopters, except for your transport helicopters, which are always going to be attachments because they should be subordinate to whatever infantry formation you're going to use. You can use the counters, you can use the formations, you can use the cards. The backs of the cards are going to be the same as the backs of the cards in Storming the Gap. You're going to have the World War 85 series, so you should have no problem mixing the decks. Sorting the decks, that's up to you. Mixing the decks is the easy part. So they're basically, any changes to the player aids, there will be subtle changes to the terrain effects chart because they're standalone games. So you have to get the terrain that's going to be in whichever game it is, and there might be subtle differences. But the basic terrain that you saw in Storming the Gap and you'll see in Blood and Fury is pretty much the same. There may be additional terrains on the bigger maps. There's none on Defense of Frankfurt, but Minden has some specialized terrain. That's going to be on the terrain effects chart for the volume. So if you do need to find a terrain, you may have to fish around between the two games on the terrain effects chart, but they're usually pretty easy. There's not that many. Going down the road, I don't know how we might combine that or not, but that's up to David. But for the moment, yes, absolutely, you can merge the two games. The changes in the core rules, we look back at Storming the Gap. It's not going to affect him at all. You can play those scenarios with the new core rules. It's not a problem at all. Everything should be fine in terms of play balance.
And we got another one for you. Let me just say I didn't miss anybody. No, I'm actually doing pretty good.
Yeah, he's got to actually bring it up, or I'm like, huh? How's that spell?
There we go.
Okay, 2 questions based on previous hints in videos. Okay. First, the Solitaire op fire changes. Second, artillery versus armor, chance of hitting a vulnerable air equipment versus caliber. And woo, hold on. The Solitaire op fire changes.
I think he's talking lock and load tactical.
It's sounding like lock and load tactical.
Okay, you know what? I know something. I'm going to just skip this question. If you can give us more detail, I'll try to answer it. But that doesn't
right.
seem...
I mean, there were. I can say this for the Solitaire, the new Solitaire deck for Blood and Fury that comes with it. There is a much clearer, explicit op fire choice. So when you need to determine whether something is going to use op fire, when the AEO is going to use op fire, you're going to pull a card, and it's going to be based on the range. And basically the idea is that, the closer you are to the AEO, the more chance he is it's going to fire. But it's not absolute. And then I think, the fact that it's not an absolute, I think is what people are really looking for. And you can tell me if I'm wrong here.
I agree.
It's like, because you can pull a card for every hex, and you might pull 4 in a row where nothing happens. So,
right,
which is what a Hibbit would do.
Next
So there you go. And there are changes to the base rules except for the green dice. The green dice is the primary thing. Wow, what else do we have? We do have it's a subtle thing. We have a new thing called alternate AP values, and this specifically comes from, and we expanded it out, from the West German Marder 1s, which their primary armament is anti-tank guided missile. It's the Milan missiles. And then they have HE. But in actual fact, the HE is from the 20 millimeter. It has a 20 millimeter. So what happened was people came to us and said, well, can I use the 20 millimeter? Is it still there? And we're like, well, how do we do this? Because it really is still there. There's no reason to penalize people because people primarily want to use, the Milans. But say the Milans in particular, they have a minimum range of 3 hexes. What if he's at 2 hexes and you need AP? So he's still got the 20 millimeter. So what we did was we basically were on the national unit tables are your Bible for what a particular unit can do. And we have a special abilities column just for things like this where we didn't think of it before. And what we're doing is for the units that have this alternate AP value, where they have a higher caliber, 20 millimeter, 30 millimeter, 70 millimeter slow bore, slow speed weapon like the BMP ones, but they're primarily armed with anti-tank guided missiles. The values for that AP weapon are going to be in that column. So it's a little bit, you do have to fish a little bit for it, but you get used to it. It's like if you have 10 BMP ones and you only have to look at it once and you'll know what you have. And of course, because it's a gun, and a lot of these missiles, they're not fired out of the gun. They're fired off of a launcher, either external or otherwise mounted on the vehicle. You have the option to use it instead. You don't have to wait for your ammo to run out. Your missiles to run out, which is possible, of course, with infantry fighting vehicles. But if you decide you want to use it earlier, you can. So that's a little subtle difference that's there. It's not a lot of units that are affected by it, but it did allow us to distinguish more clearly between units that have an alternate AP and units that have the high rate of fire HE, which is a little bit of a misnomer. It's a high rate of fire HE coupled with a very special high density ammunition. So it's basically for your Bradleys, your M2s and your M3s, because they have the depleted uranium on the 25 millimeter Bushmaster. So they've got the rate of fire and they've got penetration. So for those, we don't need to force you to go back to the national unit tables to find the AP, because you're allowed to use the HE as AP. It extends to helicopters somewhat, because there are some helicopters who, A, they have, a chin turret, let's say, but B, they probably have rockets to go with it, which we don't explicitly put on there. But if we say it's high rate of fire HE for a helicopter, because you're firing at the top armor to boot, rockets and other things and their cannon, and sometimes they're machine guns, but we're still actually, I may not let machine guns, like on the helicopter transports, be high rate of fire HE. Somebody pointed out on the Game Found draft, and that's because we haven't finalized that particular art, that one of the helicopters didn't have an enhanced move and fire. And, you dig into it, and it's like, yeah, well, because we were actually still dealing with the high rate of fire and whether it would have that. But that was an Apache, so that will have that in the end. It'll have both the high rate of fire HE and it will have enhanced move and fire. Enhanced move and fire for a helicopter is different than ground units. It's just a reminder that you can go up to 12 hexes and still fire. But you can do that with a Huey, with its machine gun. It's just you don't have high rate of fire HE with it, so you're not going to be firing any tanks. But if you do that with an Apache, you can do that. You can move to 12 hexes and then fire it off. The other thing is that high rate of fire HE used to be restricted to the printed range. And the team talked about that once people had brought it up, and we realized that no, it's going to be a normal shot. So we take a step back and make it a little bit easier and just say, look, this just means you can use this HE as an AP against heavy armor, and you just use it normally. So, and it didn't really affect things, and we were like, yeah, this is kind of cool. It's nice to have one less thing to think about.
Keith, I'm going to move you a little quicker only because you've got limited time here. Here's another one.
There are helicopters, air defense, infantry. Wait, I'm sorry. I'm not reading all the comments because I was talking.
Don't worry about that one. I think I got it wrong.
He's feeding me the questions, so I have to. Are there any other unit types represented in the game other than armor and mech infantry? We've got. That's what he was answering. Okay.
Right.
Yeah, I mean we've got helicopters, we've got anti-aircraft, we've got artillery, we've got onboard artillery, offboard artillery. I guess it's not a unit technically. Recon. Yeah, a lot of stuff.
Regular
everybody.
Okay. Right now we're seeing composite and reactive armors being under the same heading. Any thought of separating them when or if tandem warheads are used? That's really a good question. At the moment, no, we're not, because we're still sticking to 1985. And although it was I think it were initial tandem warheads, and I'm going to get in a whole lot of trouble here because I don't have my team that knows the background of each individual weapon. But that becomes a question of a tandem warhead using a reactive armor. What's it hitting? Is it hitting the front, the reactive armor? Is it hitting the side? Which is more effective? That kind of a thing. When you're using a group of units against a group of units, somebody's always going to have something vulnerable exposed, where having a tandem warhead is not as much. I mean, having a tandem warhead is helpful, but not necessarily any more of an advantage over a non-tandem warhead. If you hit something that doesn't have the reactive armor on it, it still takes the tank out. It's like an M kill. The drive wheels are notoriously vulnerable on just about all tanks that I know of. So you can get an M kill on a tank, which would be the equivalent of like either a disruption or part of a reduction if you can't get it started and kind of a thing. So I'm going to say, basically, we are aware of it, but so far so good. We haven't had to do that.
All right, here's a little bit more to that question for you.
Is only for ATMs, but would have a similar effect against infantry law. Yes and no. The thing about it is that the law and the MAW are built into the infantry anti-tank value. It's already kind of reduced. But again, also infantry are going to get much closer and be able to pick their targets to some extent. And somebody can argue about that. That's fine. But you've got a better visual view when you're within 50 meters, kind of a thing. And then of course, and I know you're not speaking about assault, but that's one of the reasons they're as effective in assault. But yeah, technically, if you were on like an MBT scale, absolutely, because you're firing single shots. Here, because you're doing like a 5 to 15 minute engagement where people are shifting around and moving, and if you get a MAR or law and you fire it on you get behind that T80, if you will. Somehow between that engagement in adjacent hexes or 2 hexes away, somehow they turn around or they expose their side because there's a group of them. Somebody will always have something exposed. Then that infantry is going to be able to take it out. And that's kind of where the dice come in, is like, well, how effective was your attack and how effective was he at maneuvering in his defense? So, yeah, technically, again, on an MBT individual weapon level, yes. On a group level, much less so. And that's why we factored it into the infantry AP values.
All right, next one.
Is this build part of the game or changed, or can we use the same assistant? You can use the assistant from Storming the Gaps expansion. You absolutely can. There's a little more detail in the new one. There's some stuff that's exclusive to Blood and Fury. And the British, the West Germans, and the Soviets. We actually didn't put any special things for the U.S. because there's so few of them. But the idea is it's really we wanted to make sure that you knew this was like a British, Soviet, West German module. But it will work. You'd have to do a little bit more work with the original one, which is why we added, for example, Opportunity Fire, and also on the new decks there's a way to determine if you're not sure. You can have the deck choose whether or not, the AEO unloads or loads from a transport at a particular range. Other than that, it's pretty much, it'll work.
Well, it also has the different commander levels, too. You can actually tell it.
Yeah, that's true.
You have the setups amount, the Solitaire setups that Keith has done. Okay? Please send your donations to his alcohol bill to the address below.
Oh, yeah.
Okay.
It's making me write more.
But at the same time, we have different postures, and they're different on the bottom of the cards, which we'll show you later. There's a gold Colonel's Leaf.
Is it Colonel's Leaf or Star?
No. Walking with Tactical is a star.
Right. Colonel's Leaf, yeah.
There's a gold and silver one. The silvers tend to be more aggressive or more defensive, depending upon what the posture is. And that's one thing. Also, the reload is done differently, as well as some of the other stuff. So instead of always having the same amount of reload, we can make the deck run through quicker, or reshuffle it faster, based on how many reload cards we dictate go into it. Usually it uses the default of 6. All right. Let's see. Here's another one. Hey, Jerry, how you doing, buddy?
Oh, hi, Jerry. Yeah. Yes, I thought David had answered that email, but I apologize if you had meant for me to. Yeah. So we're talking about the solo system.
Yes.
No, I think he's talking about the artillery.
Oh, the artillery. Oh, wait.
Right.
You could have put the first one up.
I did put the
here it is. As I said, it's small. It was mentioned you're changing its selection rules and designer as it can be overpowered in game versus armor. Yeah. So, so the artillery, the design your own was being brought to our attention was that people were, I don't take this the wrong way, they were munchkinning it, because it was inexpensive, and because of the way artillery is, pretty intense, and because you have a game that's at a tactical level, platoon level, tactical level, artillery can be overpowered, which is why we limit it in playtesting and why you don't see as much in the scenarios. So when people say, we need more artillery, I'm like, you're getting the effect of that artillery. You don't have to actually have it to pull the trigger. But for design your own, we looked at it again and we tried increasing the points, and that didn't seem to solve the issue. And we realized it's really just, if we had the time to balance a design your own scenario, there just wouldn't be as much because we would take it out. But that's not fair to people who are going to their favorite hobby store and they're doing a design your own out of the box and they're doing a competition. And it's like, well, they're buying what you told them they're allowed to buy. So what we've done for 2.2 is we've said, okay, let's bring this back into the level of, automatic play balance, if you will. And for every 3 Soviet formations, you're going to get a limited amount. You can get, I think it's 3 non-smoke and 3 smoke artillery missions. So if you have 6 formations, then you can get 6 and 6 because you're going to have a larger game anyway. But that means that now you've got, let's say you had that larger game, you've got 6, say they're HEs, but he's going to have a lot more armor. So are you really going to spend that against armor, or you're going to spend it against infantry that's embedded in the cities with improved positions that he's bought? And it brings it back into the realm of what could you use it on armor? Yeah, if he rolls something into the open, you can absolutely drop an artillery barrage on him, and yeah, you might take him out, because he's not where he's supposed to be, which is in cover. For NATO, they don't have as, they have effective artillery, but they don't have as much. So we said for every 4 formations, which actually is, it's a reinforced battalion, basicke. So for 3 battalions of Soviets, you're going to get 3 non-smoke and 3 smoke. For a reinforced battalion of NATO, you're going to get 2 and 2. So it kind of has this different balance because the Soviets just have more at the regimental, the divisional, the army level. And they're going to come bring more forces to the game. So it's going to balance out. They're going to have a little bit more artillery, but not a lot. And both sides will have enough that you can still make the choice. I don't want to tell you, no, you can't use it against armor. I can say there's probably too much in there because of the way the points worked out. And then to just hammer it home, we also upped the points on the more effective strikes, because they're just, things like artillery delivered mines. When you do the research on it, you find it was, at least in the U.S. Army, is a major ask to have artillery delivered mines. They had to haul this stuff to the artillery batteries, and it was fired special, and they had to know when it was just a whole big planning operation just to get your 3 hexes of artillery delivered mines dropped. So that was a major thing, and we're hoping, it seemed to work out as we were looking at it. It's like, you guys will tell us. We can tell people, just try and be realistic about it, but it's like, it's not fair. You guys are in your favorite hobby store. You don't want to waste time with this, so we gave you some limits and raised the prices, and we'll see if that works. Okay, so are you talking direct fire or indirect fire deadly against vehicles? I mean, it's deadly indirect fire, but the research that we did said that, yes, it is deadly. And there's multiple reasons for that, and I don't want to go into right here because I really don't want to rehash it all. But the articles that we had from, the professional articles that we had were basically, artillery, they got a Soviet... the long story short is they got a Soviet research study that said that artillery is really effective against vehicles, and the job of the people who basically got this study was to disprove that, because they're like, this is the Russians, what are they? The Soviets. This is the lie. So we need to disprove that. Well, they went out and they set it up with equivalent U.S. weapons, and yes, this was a U.S. Army department that did it, could do this. And what they found was that, well, yeah, that's true. So they set out to disprove it, and that carries a lot of weight with us. And the team looked at it and we're like, yeah, okay, well, how do we reflect that? And part of it was a response to in the previous game, which it's not compatible with this game, but armor was pretty much impervious to our offboard artillery. You were not allowed to more than disrupt armor, and what? But again, as we've discussed many times for World War 85, there are 20 different ways to disable a tank from the outside. As I said, drive wheels, artillery, those drive wheels aren't armored. And the concussion from enough artillery shells in a small enough space, it can toss a 40-ton tank or a 60-ton tank. And when you do that, it's not the tank that becomes the problem. It's the crew. They're the soft, chewy inside. But then there's, antennas and sights. If you don't have a sight, your 105 cannon's useless. Unless you're firing down, open sights. It's kind of like, all right, crank it left, fire, which you could do. But, you don't have sights, drive wheels, you're an M-kill. There's a lot of reasons for that. And so the simple thing was just to say, all right, well, you're not going to get your armor value for it. Also, if you should happen to get a direct hit, you're dead anyway, because it's the thinnest armor on any tank. It doesn't matter whether it's chop-'em, reactive, whatever. If it hits the top, it's going through. And that's kind of what we ran into on that. So I saw data-driven, but what was that? I like to let the data surprise me. Getting good data is the hard part, but I thank you for that. I appreciate that. We're not so much trying to do as it's surprising us and telling us, oh, that's different, and it makes you play. It gives you a new respect for artillery. Okay, we addressed that one, I think. Jerry, did we address that? Your artillery changes for Design Your Own? I think that's what we just did. That's what you just put up, Dave. You put up.
Right. Well, I'm trying to get an order.
Tony, have a brew for me. Just so there you go. Because I don't drink, so you can have a brew for me.
But after a few more of these games, we might be willing to learn.
There you go. Can you recap the types of scenarios? I can, actually. The story of Blood and Fury is the story of the North German plane.
Hold on, I want to put something in there. Just so you guys know, and I do have an image of this. Keith's son Ian, I believe his name is, right?
Ian's on the team, on the design team, but I think you mean Sam. We wrote
Sam,
the introduction?
yes, he wrote the
Yes.
introduction to the game, and I'm looking for the banner right now for you.
Yeah, he's a screenwriter, but when I said, Sam, would you write this introduction? He's like, yeah, sure, Dad. And he's really good. So
It is.
you know.
Now you can't tell. You can only see Keith's hands on the left side there with the three generals. But there's an audio of these three commanders talking about the planet Blood and Fury, and it's really well done. It's enjoyable to listen to. So you get a chance, guys.
And there's no microphone dropouts.
There's no microphone dropout. Although we can't put that in for realism.
It's the same microphone. I recorded it here.
You're going to recap the type of scenarios.
Oh, I thought I didn't realize he was
No,
done.
I just wanted to give him credit there because it was really well.
Oh, thank you. I appreciate the shout out there. So I'll let him know. Again, the story of the North German plane is, of course, it's the best tank country in Germany as far as the Soviet, general staff is concerned, and major forces are committed to basically get across it to cross the Weser and cross the Rhine. The way we set up our scenarios is the same as for Storming the Gap, where we understand that sometimes you guys only have like a lunch hour to play on, you want a one mapper with a formation on the side kind of a thing. So we have one map scenarios, two map scenarios, three map scenarios, and four map scenarios. And we emphasize the one mappers because, those are the ones that, people play fast and if they have a club night or something like that. But we've got multiple, recon meeting engagements between recon forces. We've got some very small escape scenarios where, somebody's trying to get off the map and it's like one formation against one formation. It's like a 5 turns. That's 1 5-turn scenario. Snuck that one in there. We have a series of not so much linked scenarios as Nicholas Michon and Susan Davis got together and I said, we need this scenario, scenario 9. And they're like, can we make 3 scenarios instead of 1? And I'm like, yeah, absolutely. It's basically there's a meeting engagement between recon forces and the Soviet forward recon forces. And then that's one scenario. And the second scenario is what happens once you get past the recon forces. But the third scenario is a combination of both of them. And it has some surprises that the first two don't. I think, don't hold me to this because I haven't looked at it in a while, but I think you can play it that the first scenario, as many forces as you get off, you can play on the second one. But it's more like you get points because there's going to be a scenario afterwards. I don't think it's actually linked in that way. But like I said, if you want to play the first half, you can do that. You want to play the second half, you can do that. And the second one is, it's effect the linking of the two, but because it's its own scenario, there's different reinforcements, there's slightly different things. So you'll have this rich experience of exploring this particular set of engagements. We of course have, our set piece battle, Blood and Bridges, which I think is 3 maps rather than 4, but they're long rather than in the rectangle. And then we have a couple of scenarios got added late. There's no, I'm sorry. There's additional scenarios for the game in Operation Red Gauntlet, which is the expansion, because we got stuff that came after our deadline for we have 14 scenarios in Blood and Fury. We got additional scenarios for Operation Red Gauntlet. We put them in Operation Red Gauntlet but they're for Blood and Fury, so you have everything you need to play with them. One of those is I'm going to call it a Nicholas Michon special because he loves the airborne anti-tank forces that Europe has. And we have a scenario where we have a full battalion of British infantry plus armor assaulting a city. Not easy. But they have, as part of their operational forces, they have a West German airborne anti-tank company. And until you've seen 3 sets of Hueys with 3 ace platoons, each with a set of anti-tank teams and either their HQ or a leader, and say, go fly out there. And you have lots of options. That particular scenario, you can help the British right in the front line, which we don't recommend. You can fly behind a flank. You can fly all the way to the other side of the map and set up, because the Soviets are going to get armored reinforcements. And that's really what those troops were made to do, was put themselves where there is nobody to make the armor deploy until somebody could get up there. But this is sort of like a twist on that. So that's a really cool scenario. Nicholas and I playtested that a bunch of times, and we're like, wow, this is really cool. I'm sorry, that's just us. We get excited. And then there is a West German counterattack scenario where you're going to get, I think, full battalion plus for the West Germans, and then includes like 2 companies of Leo 2s. Anybody who's ever played Storming the Gap knows what one company of Leo 2s can do. 2 is like, ah. So, and it's really, really cool as far as that. That's a 2 mapper, I think. And then, David, am I okay to do Red Gauntlets to tip into those scenarios, the big scenarios?
Dan's got an important question for you, buddy.
Oh, Keith, what mic are you using? How are you, Dan? It is a Beehive 2, and I just got it like a couple of months ago because my old one died completely. So it's like little hex combs on the front here. But yeah, it's I love it. So that was a technical question.
I got some other stuff here for you. Okay, now, again, guys, you can go and look at this stuff. I'll go over some of the, I guess there will be stretch goals or add-ons, so you can look on the page and decide. The thing that's gotten the most questions about is this bad boy. Okay, and
I like it.
This is basically, we call them flight stands, I believe is what Blackwell named them.
Yes.
And
that's what they are.
Yeah, they're basically made to fit over a single hex in World at War 85. And a counter will fit on top of them. The count is the hexagon size is probably more close to the count. I think this is just a mock-up. But it's just, it's something cool. Basically, our rule going forward for this game and probably the other crowdfunding games is we're not going to add items to the game through the stretch goals. We want to give you the game and everything you need to play. Our stretch goals will be nice things to have to enhance your play or something we think is cool, which you may not. But it's made to be more of enhancements and stuff. We clearly put that into the Kickstarter when you look down on it. These, like I said, let's just say this was never a stretch goal and it never got met. No one's not going to be able to play the game without these. Okay, and that's what we're trying to do with that. And you see any questions for that? Let's see. Uwe likes it.
Yeah.
And Richard likes it. We got another question for you, Keith.
With close air support, it's dangers of fratricide. I think some sort of JTAC call for fire, like artillery, would be needed rather than straight up pick what you want. This is an excellent design question. And we had an air game with, air cover and escorts, and basically we came down to what the system that we ended up with, because we had to make the choice of this is not an air game. If it were, and I've been doing a lot of research on how the close air support would actually manifest for War in the Air 85, which is the squadron level operational game that I'm working on based in the World of War 85 universe. For example, the A-10s, I mean, they're not actually going to be in the hex that you're in. They're going to be, 7 or 8 hexes away. But we don't need that game. So putting it, picking your target is more a question of that's what got reconned as they went over on the first pass, and that's where they're going to go. You could put in a JTAC roll, but that's kind of wrapped into the interception roll. If you're worried about fratricide and saying, well, it could scatter, yeah, that's a valid thing. I'm just not sure what it would add for the complication. Think about it this way. If you have an MLR, an F-111 MLRS from Defense of Frankfurt, that's a 7-hex thing. It may not drift, but if you decide to call it in as final protective fire, you might get one of your guys. So I'm going to say absolutely you have a valid point. For us, we had to make a choice, and it was the other way, which is not to say that we might not reconsider. So I'm glad you brought it up, actually. I am going to take it to the team again and see. But because we have a die 6 set up for status. So the 1 is you're intercepted and you're gone for the game. And the 6 is you get surprised, which means only 1 unit gets to shoot at you with no other units adding in dice rolls. We thought that was a reasonable compromise.
I'm going to let Mo sneak in with this question here.
How's that? I've been doing additional research, but the core of the core systems in the game are working out really well. Because I've been working on this, it's very difficult to prototype. But the next thing I want to do is I want to prototype. The map will look very different than when you saw it when we were in Texas at that wonderful convention. but it's progressing. It's much different than what we played there, and I think people are really going to like it. But then I gotta like I said, there's work to do on it, to be sure. It's actually sitting on the table behind me, but everything's kind of pushed aside.
Right. Some of the other things we have, and guys, we just did this for the fun.
There you go.
We took the covers. There are no titles on it for the games, but they are going to be 18 by 24. They are printed on canvas. I do have two on my desk, but this image looks much better than me holding it up, but I'll do that later. But that's for Blood and Fury. And so if you want something for the office, and that one is for Operation Red Gauntlet.
Yeah, that's the expansion cover.
Right. Now, some people have said, hey, there's a Red Gauntlet for Lock and Load Tactical. Here's what happened. Originally, Heroes of the Gap, which is now, when we repackaged it, we added stuff into it, we called it Heroes Against the Red Star. It was the tactical scenarios in reference to the original World at War. So we kind of did the same thing, just tradition, okay, if you want to call it that. So Devin, okay, has designed some great Lock and Load tactical scenarios, and it's called Red Gauntlet. So the expansion kit for Blood and Fury is called Operation Red Gauntlet. Darren swore that this was going to cause confusion, but I think you guys are smart enough. So.
No, it's going to cause confusion. And to cause even more confusion, the Lock and Load tactical setting is not the World at War 85 setting, although there are a lot of things that do kind of cross over and sound real similar to each other.
World War III is World War III. No,
well, exactly. World War III is right. And it's the Soviets trying to get to,
right,
into France and get to the Atlantic. So I made some design decisions that have not really gone over real well with some people. So I would like to think that Keith's World at War 85 is a more historic look at how the war would have flown. Mine is, this sounds cool, let's throw it in because, hey, the balloon's going up and let's just do it because it's crazy anyway. So.
Well, I can't tell you this. It's like, as we all know, any war game is an experiment in alternate history. There is a strategic storyline that we discussed that has some very, definite touch points that we don't need to like put it out there for you guys. You get it in the bits and pieces in this, in the introduction to the companions and the introduction to the scenarios. And yes, Mo, this is the one where you helped with the scenario descriptions. But it's basically our Red Storm Rising. Tom Clancy wrote his version. Red Army, one of my favorites. It heavily influenced this. I don't think Harold Coy stuff is like, this is our version of that, but we're not novelists. We're making a game, but we need that structure to make sure that like those campaign maps make some kind of sense. It's still alternate history. We're still going to make choices that some historian is going to go, that couldn't possibly have happened. And I'm like, well, it didn't, thank God. But that's sort of the basis for that. So there's a lot of stuff flashing up here, David. Are you going to make a choice?
I'm up here, buddy. Come on.
The Tornado character, is this a design choice because the link is facing to the right? It's not so much a design choice as, first of all, we do leave that to the artist, but when it came back to me and I make the final decision, because we're at a platoon level game, you never know what direction, there's no facing, and you never know what direction somebody's going to be facing, assaulting, facing whatever it is. So you don't get that, well, we're always coming from the left, we're all coming from the right, so it didn't make any sense to restrict that. It's really the counter color that for me visually picks things out. I understand, people kind of want that, but it's like, how do you know which? If all the packed are facing left and you're coming in from the left side of the map, now they're all facing backwards. So I kind of like let it flow and let the artist basically pick the best view of the vehicle. And I'm not sure whether a right or a left profile necessarily makes a better view, but like I said, I leave that to him. But I really wasn't going to gainsay him. So
okay,
we will do our best.
I'm going to bring up some more material here. Okay, just so you know, some people have asked, I'm going through my email, say, hey, they're kind of surprised we didn't do a reprint of Storming the Gap, and that's because I think there's only like 20 or 25 games max left. And I think there's actually less expansions, left, Part 1 and 2.
In the warehouse, you mean?
No, yeah, in the warehouse, yeah. So, but we are reprinting the single map for Folger Gap, which is for storming the gap. So it's in the add-ons for Blood and Fury, and there is also a one-piece map which I did put up here, same size. That's the one for Blood and Fury.
Yeah, this is Minden and Environs.
Right now, Keith might want to explain the Dark Blue River.
The dark blue is the Vezir itself, because it's particularly, you need to visually distinguish where the Vezir is. There's a lot of tributaries here. Also, the crossing of the T at the top there, the blue that goes left to right across the top, that's the Mittelland Canal. And it's a canal that has, like, in some places has like 20-foot high cement walls. So it doesn't get treated the same way the Vezir itself does, but you kind of need to know where your objective is. So we went to Mark von Marshall and we're like, can you please make the Vezir itself darker? It is pretty wide. So, there's no issue with that or anything. But these are the 8 maps that 8 of the 9 maps that you'll get in the Red Gauntlet expansion. And again, they fit together in this specific configuration, which is 49 through 56, if I'm remembering. You put it this way, and this is historical Minden. I sketched this out, so if there's any issues, it's on me. But the outer edges, the big edge all the way on the outside, they're all geomorphic. So if you match them against a Storming the Gap map or a Storm and Steel map or a Defensive Frankfurt map, it's going to match, and you're going to be able to make your own map that way. The interior, seams, those only match the maps they're up against right now. Now, Defensive Frankfurt, they're all, like I said, they're all that first map that David showed, it's nicknamed the Fulda Gap map, even though it is actually in the Fulda Gap, but it's from the Defensive Frankfurt expansion to Storm and Steel. I can't believe I keep all these names right. I guess if I can't, nobody can.
All right, one of the other stretch goals, stretch goals, I think I got it right, is this book by Brad Smith. We've had this book done for a while now. If the stretch goals reach, you guys will get a PDF and an MP3 of it. Okay, so it'll be just a download, but it's a story that, it's not necessarily attached to any scenario, but it's really well done. And the voiceover guy who did the reading of the book did a really nice job. I was really impressed with that. So just so you guys know, and I hope we can get Brad to write some more stories. So write him some love letters, guys. Tell him how great his books are, if you don't mind. Okay. Okay to start, buddy. Come on in.
Let's recap. We're doing a game.
Okay. The other thing I have. Oh, we did do something special, guys. I guess we're going to kind of do away with the Module Rules and Scenarios book. And we're going to give you in the box now, and it's already, again, on the Game Found in both the draft and will be for the actual campaign, the companion book. Okay, it will be saddle stitched, okay, or glued, or whatever the way they do it. And that will have all the module rules, all the scenarios, but it also have any custom rules as far as like maybe the solitaire cards. Instructions will be in there. It's not going to be in the core rules because they could change based on the game. Same thing for anything else that may come up. All the charts and tables will be in the book as well. The solitaire setup will be in this book as well. And so you may say, well, why do I want one that's spiral bound? It's a stretch goal because a lot of people do like the spiral bound because it lays flat. You can fold it over. I don't think I'll throw this again, but you guys know. So it is a stretch goal for the core rules 2.2 and for the companion book. Okay, but both of them will come in the game, and they right now they're scheduled to be saddle stitch. If we reach that stretch goal, the saddle stitch goes out, and the core rules with the spiral bound go in. But if you just want an extra book or you don't want the game, the reason the companion book was originally designed was a pandemic thing. So maybe something good out of COVID came out, okay? Was if you only play virtually, we got a lot of guys writing us, I don't want to hold the box here. I don't want to spend all the money on the box I never open and play with. I only use it for the scenarios and the tables to play through Vassal virtually or Tabletop Simulator. So we made this book. You can buy the book. We basically say, hey, this is you're still supporting us. It's a digital license. You've got everything you need, okay, that you can now go play online. So if somebody wants us to get the book, go ahead and do that as well. I do not know if they'll let you just order the add-on book and not a pledge. We'll have to see how that goes. But after the campaign and it goes into the late pledge, I believe it does. Any questions on that, anybody? There's 4 more questions I see. Mo's very happy. Okay. Yeah, I prefer the Fireball myself too, but again, the cost of this is somewhat more because it's much more labor intense than just running it through a machine. And yes, you could. Let me just say this too: if you bought the game, you can take the book, bring it down to Kinko's or
Staples, Office Depot, yeah, any of those.
Cut the corner off of the book and spiral bound it for you. So you can do that too. So just realize that. Okay.
I saw a quick question. Somebody and this may be more for Devin than me, but is there any update on the naval game set in World War 85 universe?
Yes.
Okay, go on.
Okay, so basically, Steve has just recently retired from the military, so he's been doing his out processing and getting established as a, I don't want to call him a civilian because you're never a civilian. He's establishing himself in the civilian community after being in the military for so long. He has finalized the numbers for the planes and the ships. He's had the rule book sent out to several people so they can give input on it. He's cleaning up the rule book, and he is working on the scenarios. That's really the biggest thing right now that he's working on right now is the scenarios. The map is done. There's been a little final tweaks from what we showed off in Texas last year, but it's, for all intents and purposes, it's still the same map. We're hoping to get the last of the artwork finalized. We originally were going with black silhouettes for the ships and the aircraft, kind of like how the old Fleet series did. We are now going with a full color artwork. The Ben Rawlings, who's
I was
been
just
doing,
going to say, it's got to be Ben Rawlings.
Ben has been doing phenomenal work for us. You're probably not going to see a lot of the detail on the counters, but that doesn't matter because we're going to give you the data cards with all the ship information, all the plane information, the same thing that we've done with the data cards for the original Storming the Gap, for Bitter Harvest. I mean, it's going to be a standard in our games from here going forward. So you really get to see these really nice color prints that Ben has done up, and you'll get to see the details on them and the stacks and the colors flying. It is really, really cool stuff. We're probably not going to get that anywhere this year, probably, but I'm guessing early next year.
Yeah. Ben has also done the graphic work on Stuka Ace, right?
Mm-hmm.
Ace, which you should see very shortly.
And he's doing the final art on War in the Air 85.
Yep.
Yes.
And the story of that is that when I was looking to do test counters, I saw his artwork, and he has stuff on Wargame Vault, and I just bought his stuff, and cut and pasted it because it was just for me. And then and I ran into so much trouble because I didn't have certain planes. I put one up, and the first question I got is, "That's not a MiG-27." And I'm like, I know it's not a MiG-27.
It's a playtest copy.
All I had.
That's for me.
What looks as threatening as a MiG-27? A MiG-29. But there's no MiG-29s in Western Europe. They're all in the north and in Poland. So there you go. If you want to, play the data game there. But no, he basically, he was engaged, and he's slowly doing, because obviously it's not the most developed. The naval game is there, and of course, Stuka. I want to say Stuka Joe every time I say Stuka. So there you go. That game obviously was switched closer, so it doesn't have the highest priority, but he is slowly getting me the actual art. And I am, as I get it, I transfer it onto my playtest counters because I use stickers, so I can replace things really fast.
Some of the other things that Ben's doing for us too. Little secret, Keith and I have worked on this together. We're not going to say what official title. Well, I think it is already on the board game.
We do have the official title for it. Yeah.
Pacific Crucible, and it's a carrier battle, naval battle game. based on a very successful older game that will also show, but it's going to have top downs and side views, and we'll get to that another time.
And he owes me because he made me do spreadsheets.
Yes, I did. I made him do a lot of spreadsheets.
Yeah, I hope they were useful because I don't remember how I did them.
That's my fault, Keith, because I don't know how spreadsheets work at all. I know how to open them, but it's all magic.
I'll give you stuff to open. You just got to do stuff with them.
Yeah, he says he doesn't know how to, but yeah. Okay.
Yeah, there's a lot of stuff. It's like, wow, if I only had enough time to actually make games full time. Sea Strike. Oh boy, do I remember Sea Strike?
Was that a Milton Bradley game? Or was that
No. I think it was
Harrier Strike. That's the Milton Bradley one.
Yeah.
We talked about the whole game and everything else. And,
You missed it.
you missed it. We canceled it. There's no more Normandy.
Spent like 20 minutes going over it. It's too
Now
much.
be nice. Jamie just joined the World War 85 page. Welcome aboard, Jamie. I'm the Keith that signed on there. So yeah, but yeah, I say if you ever get Heroes of Normandy, maybe I'll get a copy. Ba-dum-ba.
Yeah.
No, I remember I did the audiobook that they had because there was a bunch of authors who did vignettes on that into the Heroes of Normandy book, and I got to do the audiobook on that, which was fun.
Yeah, we haven't made any decisions on that going forward. I mean, we did put it up for people to put down whether they would like it. If it gets enough, interest in numbers for us to consider it, we are technically going to reprint it, but we just didn't know what way, shape, or form. But it won't be anytime soon. You'll have a better chance of seeing the modern naval game and the carrier game probably before Normandy at the rate we're going.
One of the biggest things with Normandy is that we really, really need to redo the artwork because that artwork is like 22 years. Yeah, it's 20 years old. Plus, there have been so many expansions for it. Are we going to put all the expansions into it? Are we going to reprint the expansions? We want to do stuff. We want to add new stuff. We want to add the partisans. We want to add the Free French working in it. We want Canadians in it. I mean, it's a project we want to do. We just don't know how big we want to go with it yet. And that's kind of where we're waiting at. So it's not a decision we finalized on yet.
David, may I show them the data cards, the prototypes?
I think you have my hand.
Let me go find that on my computer here. Hold on for 2 seconds.
I'm going to look. We have the Solitaire stuff, so you can talk about that.
Yeah. Blood and Fury, data cards. Let me go find that. And
do you know the directory that Blackwell was kind enough to put the sample scenario for World War 85 with the solo setups?
I do not. I saw the one on the Game Found.
Their own Game Found?
It has solo setups.
Oh,
well, there's a banner.
There's a sample. There's a sample on there on the Game Found.
Okay, that means it's somewhere. Hold on.
I will be right back.
And I am here. I apologize, guys. I'm looking for this PDF. Oh, here it is. Is this right? Yes. Okay. All right. So let me make sure I'm here and I can share. And let me see if I can share screen.
Was it a red gauntlet scenario?
What was that?
Was it a red gauntlet scenario?
Yeah, he called it Red Gauntlet, but that may be the one that I sent in changes. So can you guys see?
Give me a second. I can fix that.
Oh, you have to.
I got certain powers here. Hold on. There you go.
All right. Oh, okay. Good. So you guys can see. Oh, excellent. Wonderful. Okay, so these are the new data cards. These are the prototypes. What I wanted to point out, let's see if I can make this bigger.
Woo-hoo, look at that. Oh, you picked it up. You had it, buddy.
How's that? Okay. There we go. All right. So, first of all, you get, and obviously it's not going to be this big, but it is going to be the largest image of the counter that you have. We've slightly reorganized them from the ones in Storming the Gap because we realized that when the whole thing about the miniature scales, which is not as of interest to everyone, is that there's no agreement in the miniatures world what the scale numbers actually mean. So what we decided to do is rather give people a place to where they can write their particular scale, and we gave them the conversion value, which is 1 hex is 150 yards or 165 meters, and then they can calculate that from the counter that's pictured above, whether it be full strength or reduced, and write that in there. So it's a place to write that for your particular scale. But on the right side, now we have a complete identification of whatever unit it happens to be, what type of unit it is, and these are from the national unit tables. So it's kind of like a way of getting everything pulled out of the one line into one place with a, including the image. And it'll tell you, what defensive type. In this case, the Gepard is light armor. But then below that these are the individual rule callouts for the capabilities of this particular vehicle. The important thing there is it comes directly from the national unit table, so they should correspond. I want to show you the Martyr, just to do that whole alternate AP and what that's going to look like. Oh, come on. Don't give everybody seasickness. There we go. So this is the Martyr 191 gun. So it's got a 326 AP in the upper left there. But the Martyr 1, you're going to have this data card. You'll see the third line there. You may be able to see it says Alt AP value 326 and reduce 316, which is exactly what it is on the Martyr 1A1, which is the 20 millimeter without the missiles, basically. So when the upper left grooving of the armor piercing, the 744, that's the Milan missiles. When that runs out, or in place of that, if you still have them, you can always use that Alt AP value for an AP value. So that's what that's going to look like. But you'll notice that when things get on the right side, you have the rule callouts. Toward the bottom, they're going to be a little bit of gray because advanced night fighting and thermal imaging are things that don't happen all that often, and thermal imaging is still completely optional. It's just the way it works. But now you're going to know specifically which units can use it, basically, rather than have to have a separate table that we'd have to update each time. We're always updating the national unit tables for a particular game, so we're going to put that information there. I did want to show you a cool, snazzy little unit that to go with the West German anti-tank troops. The West Germans had a vehicle here. It's the Kraka. And the reason I want to show you this is it's kind of tiny and everything. It's sort of like a moon rover of tow launchers. It is literally small enough that it folds in half like a giant suitcase. And they put it in the helicopter. And then they pull it out of the helicopter, they open it up, and they can move. They go. It's a vehicle. Has 4 tows with it. It's really cool. So this counter actually represents more than one of these because they're that small. So it's completely new for Blood and Fury. You notice it's not very fast and it's a soft target, but when you got tows, you get that first shot off. There you go. And because it has tows, it has advanced night fighting and thermal imaging too. So there's options there. But that's just one little treat I wanted to give you. And there you go. But the data cards they're all coming, data wise, they're coming directly from the national unit tables that will be in the back of the companion.
Okay. I have something for you guys here. Let me share the screen again. Share screen. That one. I did not find the solo yet, guys, but I know it's on the page. So we'll get to that in a second. I know Keith wants to explain this at all. I don't know if I can make it. I really can't.
Only make it bigger.
Yeah, I don't know if I can make it bigger. But anyway, this is scenario 11 for the game. And anything you want to, it's just...
Yeah, as you scroll down, one of the things, now this, you don't see it, we're going to have a map that is not part of this, where it says map 4, map 5, map 7, map 6 inverted. That is going to be replaced with a visual graphic of those maps. And it's going to be as large as we can make it, because if there are setup areas, they're not really so much going to be described for each formation, more like see Soviet setup area 1 on the playable area map. Because that's really the place to adjudicate, where if there's an irregular setup area, you want to be able to visually see it. So there's going to be some transparency to that on the map, so you can see where on the map it is. And then for me, it's just easier to translate. When you have to describe things like, go west on the river, south on the river, past this town to get an irregular area, it is fraught with the generation of errors when you're proofing it. So the general rule is going to be, and we're probably going to write this into the companion as a rule, is if the map and the description differ, the map is correct. because it's just so much easier for us to visually proof the map. That's part of our process to improve the proofing on scenarios, is to get those hex calls out of there. So let's just scroll on down. We have a new format. Oh, here's one of the maps. There we go. So you can see there's objective A, and you can see that's where that's where you're going to put the marker. This is not a final because the objective marker obviously has to go into one of those hexes. But yeah, keep scrolling on down there. But it shows you where the objectives is, and the fact that the objective is both sides of the bridge, for example, in this case. There's one there at the bottom left that says C scenario, probably scenario rule 1 or 2, because I think those bridges are always blown in this particular scenario. So let's scroll down to the next page, which is the second half of the map. And see the Soviet setup area 1, Soviet setup area 2. This is not a final map by a long chalk because the transparency is not enough. There's a British setup area there as well. And again, this is literally, if the first page you just saw was the left half of the page, or left page, and this is the right page, you'll get this whole large map, so you'll be able to see what the setup is. So yeah, and again, like I said, this is not a final. We left that little grid of 4, 7, etc. That's for us to proof against the graphic. So let's scroll down a little bit more, and you'll see that you get the playable area map. Then you immediately get the objectives, and here you're going to have hex calls, and we are hammering on these to make sure they are correct. So, but again, if there's an error here versus an error on the map will rule. So there's always a way to resolve it, so you don't have to worry about it. In this case, the objective says that there's an asterisk, and that asterisk means for these, there's certain bridges that are always destroyed in this scenario. And that's it. We keep scrolling down. So you've got the map, then you've got the objectives. We're moving this section. This is the additional formation card, so ignore this for the moment. Let's keep scrolling. The next thing you're going to see is the victory conditions right after the objectives. That's why we're moving that. And then you're going to see the scenario rules, because you want to see those in relation to the victory conditions. Right before the order of battle, that's where we're going to put the additional cards that you're going to put into your formation deck. And those are just your end operations phase cards, your battlefield event cards. If there's an EW card that's implied by the scenario, we'll put it there. We're going to say explicitly, this is what you do. And that's how you start building your deck. And then you go into the order of battle and just start collecting those cards. The other thing we did was there were all sorts of issues where we ran into proofing issues, whether it's 1 or 2 cards. And so what I said was, well, guess what? When there's 2 cards, you're going to see 2 cards. When there's 1 card, you're going to see 1 card. Other than that, the orders of battle are going to pretty much remain the same. Also, for any particular formation, right now it says like set up in any full hex of map 4 or 5 right under British setup, that banner there. The formation is going to be first and larger. The setup information is going to be second and either the same font or smaller. But again, 2 cards, you put 2 cards in. Also, the side that sets up first, it's going to be listed first in the order of battle, and everything's going to be listed. It's not going to be broken out by like, well, anything other than like fortifications, offboard artillery, those things, but everything that is starting is going to be in the at start section. So the British set up first here, and that banner, the second banner there is going to go away. We're not going to waste space with repeating the banner, because once you're into a section, you're kind of know you're in that section. So let's keep scrolling down here. So here you can see there's fortifications, tells you the setup. These are our new offboard artillery grids, although there's going to be more lines, not less, just to make sure you guys know that that's 3 different types of offboard artillery, and it tells you exactly where to put it on the player aid, when it comes in, who can use it, how many you have, what the strength is. If you'll continue down. So now we have the Soviets who are setting up second. And again, everything they have is going to be all, listed in a row, depending on where they're setting up, and any variations in their setup will be indicated right there. So keep scrolling down here, please. Here's their offboard artillery, and then we get to this third section. It's called all reinforcements. It's not going to say all order battle reinforcements. It's going to say all reinforcements. What we realized is, and Jeff Schulte came up with this simple and therefore brilliant idea, which is, because we were doing like, okay, here's the reinforcements for the Soviets, and they're listed here, and here's the Soviets for the British. But it's just easier to list all the reinforcements in chronological order. And somebody said, well, how are we going to do the nationalities? I'm like, it's on the cards. It's like it says, Soviet Union, United Kingdom, number of cards. So we went to that, and so now you see turn 4, turn 5, and again, any setup information. But again, we're going to put the name of the formation first, because that sort of starts the block rather than have other things. So if we continue to scroll down here, oh, you're getting 4 challengers in this one. Woohoo! And helicopters. And also, if there's any removals, You'll also see those in this all order of battle thing. So we'll scroll on down here. Here's the close air support. Keep going. Is that it?
That's it.
Okay. After, and again, this is definitely an early draft. This is nowhere near.
I just grabbed it out there.
Yeah, you just grabbed it as, because after that is going to be, after every scenario are going to be the new solo setups. And the way the solo setups are, and this is like Bitter Harvest apparently has this, you know, you have a page of solo setups or whatever it takes. And it's, you can see it in the game found. There's going to be a solo setup. Then there's going to be how you set up your solo deck, because you're not necessarily going to use all the action cards or all the additional, you know, fate cards or event cards or whatever they are. It'll tell you, you know, all right, you're only going to use these 2 or choose from these 4. But then it's going to say, you know, if you're playing as the Soviets, they're in an offensive posture. Add the Colonel cards for offensive. And then if you're playing the British in this scenario, they have a defensive posture. So use the, you know, the defensive cards, basically. Within each of those, once you set the, once you do the deck, then you're going to do the player who sets up first, going to do the solo setups. Well, solo setups are really hard when you've already got a formation-based game, and they tend to set up in setup areas. But generally speaking, it's, well, are you going to set up in terrain? Are you going to set up with another unit? We tried to give you some guidelines, and we have 2 new miscellaneous tables in Player A5. One is basically a solo location table. So when you have a group of, you know, your battalion of T-80s, and they're setting up in Soviet Setup Area 1, there's a limited number of cover in there. And you're going to roll on the table for each unit. For a solo setup, you take your time to set it up. Or you can roll in groups. You can do whatever you want. It's solo. But the suggestion is roll for each unit. Yeah, here's the solo setup, for example. So it's like a British setup. Roll for each unit, and the table will tell you you're going to set up in defensive terrain. You're going to set up not in defensive terrain. You're going to set up, you know, there's a few items that are, it's a pretty fresh table, so I don't remember all of it. But the basic idea is that the general rule is you don't set up within line of sight of an enemy unit or an enemy setup area unless the scenario setup rules, the solo rules say so, and some of them do, because some of the scenarios are so small, you have to set up in line of sight of the AEO, unless you're playing the other side. So it has the AEO set up for the British in this case. Underneath that is the AEO set up for the Soviets. If there's any adjustments that needed to be done to the scenario rules, that will be detailed. And then if there's any adjustments that need to be done to the entrance for all the reinforcements, any reinforcement that is affected is done. If you don't see something for a formation, and we're not going to try to do that, we're going to try and put everything in, but if you don't see something for a formation, the 2-player setup covers it. And I can tell you right out of the gate, scenario 1 of this game has 3 Soviet formations and 3 West German formations randomly arriving on the map. And the scenario was written this way actually before we decided to go full solo with it. So you don't really need anything because the setup rules already are. Roll on this table, and this is in the scenario rules. And then each, you know, you set up in this order, a West German, a Soviet, a West German, a Soviet, and each one rolls, and they set up in an area that somebody else hasn't already set up in based on this table. That's kind of the technique you'd use for any solo setup, but it's built into scenario 1. So the solo rules are this big as opposed to, you know, being multiple, you know, being even as big as this. Basically, it's like, here's how you set up your deck. Follow the 2-player rules. So the 2-player rules rule. If you don't see something for a solo setup, the odds are it's in that 2-player rule. If for some reason you still can't quite figure it out, that's when we're going to go like, okay, roll a die. We're going to try and proof it as best we can. Absolutely. That's our job. But if we look at it in the 2-player setup, looks like it's easy enough to do. Say there's only 2 hexes to set up in and you've got 4 units. That's pretty much up to you. You know, it's something that, you know, you don't have to step totally into someone's shoes to say, I've got 2 hexes and 4 units and one's a transport. So I'm going to, you know, I don't know, I'm going to put them in the same hex with the infantry. There's a second table though, that's for passengers. So if some of the solo setups say you've got a set, you know, say you've got 3 martyrs and you've got 3 infantry. It says roll for each pair. And then, you know, you place it where you roll location to find a location for the pair. Then you roll on the passenger table, which is the only other solo table, that tells you whether it's loaded in the transport it's not loaded in the transport moves to another hex, or the infantry moves to another hex. So there's a little bit of variation there. And then there's stacking limits. So you can't go in that hex if it's over the stacking limits, or you can go in the hex, resolve where the passenger is, and if the stacking limits are still over, then you've got to move the transport too. Try to keep it as simple and clean as possible and based on terrain, because that's where people would tend to set up, is in some kind of terrain. That's
I know
what I
this
got.
is a little broad. There are now icons on the AEO order cards, and I know they look like I'm blowing up the screen. So again, you guys can see this right now by just going to the GameFound page on this. Keith, you want to explain a little bit about the AEO order icon?
Yeah, I do actually. So the AEO order, for people who've seen the original World War 85 and Nations at War Solitaire, it's the same in terms of structure. It's just a slightly different content. So the 1, 2, 3 on that top section, I believe that used to be called the priority order section. It still may be priority order section. That corresponds to, if the unit you've picked this order for is, and this is an AEO unit, is at point blank range, you're going to start with the 1 line, and you're going to read across the orders until it does something. If it does nothing, then you'd skip to the bottom. If the unit starts at between point blank and effective, more than point blank and equal to effective range, of its own units, of its own firepower, basically, then you're going to start on line 2, same thing. And then, of course, if you've got somebody who's beyond effective range but is still in long range, you're going to start with 3. If the unit is not in line of sight of any unit, you just immediately start with the bottom stuff. And the bottom stuff used to be called secondary orders, and now it's called, I can't read it.
Battlefield situation.
Battlefield situation. So basically you use the battlefield situation section. And again, you just start at the top for that and work your way down until the thing actually does an order. Generally at the bottom, you're going to get to either execute victory conditions or execute counteractions. Those are the only spreadsheets. And they're not spreadsheets. I'm sorry. They're more like tracks in the World War 85 solo system. If you get execute victory conditions, you go, and there's 10 conditions, and you start at the left, and you see whether it applies to your unit. And eventually, one of them is going to apply. If nothing applies, you can pick another card or do nothing with that unit. That is your choice. All right, it's not absolutely necessary that every AEO unit do something. Battle confusion, it can stop a platoon for 15 minutes while it waits for orders. So don't worry about it. If you want to keep going, pick another card and see if it finds it. New things on the AEO order, the icons to the right, and you can see them most clearly on that left AEO order card, the right side of the priority orders, and the first line, the right side of the battlefield situation orders. Those are the new icons that represent opportunity fire, unload, and load. And the opportunity fire is the crosshairs. Load is the up icon, unload is the up arrow icon, and unload is the down. So what happens is if you have an AEO unit, a transport, with a passenger, and it's at point blank range from you as a player, you pick its order and say, does it unload? And you pick, and you look at point blank range, and if it says unload, it unloads. If you need to figure out whether it unloads in the same hex or an adjacent hex or unloads into an assault, there I would suggest you roll the die, or you can roll on the passenger table and let that guide you. If it were an opportunity fire situation, and you've moved an AEO unit into line of sight of one of your guys, obviously you can fire. But if you move into line of sight of an enemy AEO, and you're within point blank range, if there's a crosshairs at point blank range for that AEO's order, when you pick the card to see whether he opportunity fires, he fires. Not every card has that. The percentages are built into the ranges. There are more opportunities for opportunity fire at point blank range, fewer at effective range, and fewest at long range. Obviously, you're not in line of sight, so you can't really use that for battlefield situations. But for battlefield situations, you're not in line of sight, and you have an AEO unit, and you're like, well, does he load or unload? And that percentage is reflected on, that's where you have the icons there. You can see a load and an unload. And it doesn't matter which it is. It's like you pick what you want before you pick the card, and then you see if the icon is there. The percentages are already built into those lines. The specific orders themselves, we did tweak some of the point blank orders. There seems to be a lot more assaults than there may have been. We switched some things around, but basically it's pretty much the same. It's going to be intense when you get close. It just is. And we did try to make sure that to take out typos and stuff like that might have occurred. We do want everything in here to key to the same glossary that was in the original World War 5, but we're gonna QC that to make sure the glossary is right, because you're gonna have a glossary of what does this term mean on this card. But again, the structure is the same. The white triangles in any individual line are the first order. That's what delineates the orders. So you read left to right, top to bottom. So you read that left-hand order right after the triangle. If you can execute it, you're done. The AO is done. If you can't, go to the next one on the same line. If you can't do that, then you go down to the battlefield situation. So you're always starting at whatever priority range you're at. But if you can't do anything in that range, you go to the battlefield situation. And if that, you get to the bottom of that, like I said, it's either going to be execute victory conditions, or it's going to be counter actions, or it might be nothing. And again, when you get to nothing, it's a solitaire game. So you can leave them do nothing, or you can pick another card because you're like, I want this narrative to go on. I want to see what this guy does right now. That's your prerogative. Enough of the orders, but that's the orders of the majority of the cards. The AO reload, there's conditions at the bottom that basically says, like, if the you put a few cards in, and if let's say your AEO is in an offensive stance, and you pick this card and it says you only reshuffle if they're in a defensive stance, you wouldn't reshuffle, you just discard the card. But then when you get to the one that says offensive stance, then you would reshuffle the deck. So it gives a little more variety. There's 6 of these cards. They have different conditions on them. In the solo setup, we'll suggest how many cards to put in or which cards to put in. A lot of times I've been writing down, put all 6 cards in.
We did that too a lot in the factor, because it does that too. Also, just so you guys notice, there's no more dice on the cards.
Yes, there's no more dice on the cards.
We took it away because it just, for the amount of dice you get to roll for some of the battles, it just, you'd be picking 8 cards out to add up all the dice, and we just didn't think it was effective anymore. So the dice is now, so you're going to have to roll physical dice. I know gamers hate that, right?
I have no stash of dice that's like the size of his file cabinet. Absolutely not. The last thing is the action events. Actually, there's action events, and then there's another type of event. But the action events are, there it is, battlefield event. So the action events, which is the last card up here, these are customized for each game. And this is like, okay, special things that are about the British and the West Germans and the Soviets. So this is actually where, for solo games, the Soviet artillery comes into play, because we've added in, like, oh, well, here's regimental artillery that you didn't have before. Here's divisional artillery. Here's army artillery. And, the chance that you'll get one of those levels is different on each card, but at least it's in there. So if we say, this is a divisional operation, you're going to get divisional artillery, we're going to suggest you put that card in the deck. Then there's very special circumstance. The British tend to emphasize they dig in really well. So they'll get like extra improved positions. They do have problems with artillery ammunition, from what I understand from the time. Feel free to tell me I'm wrong. But that's what the teams are. They're like, we're going to put that as, okay, fine. So we kind of have that in there. The West Germans have some really good recon units, and that's sort of in there. The Soviets will have artillery stuff. But the battlefield event stuff, they're like a variation on that action. These are really specific, sort of exciting things that can happen. This is where you'll find things like the real world tornadoes that would come in. Technically tornadoes wouldn't come in for close air support, but if they did, they're basically got, cluster bombs. And they're low, and they're fast, and they're almost impossible to stop. So the cards basically, here's your tornadoes. It's a normal close air support, when it comes up, but there's no interception roll, and there's no surprise. So it's just, he puts it in, he drops it, and he leaves, and nobody shoots at him. Harriers, where they're coming in with surprise. So basically, whether you roll surprise or not, you'll only get to fire 1 unit at them, not 1 unit plus, dice for additional units, kind of a thing. For the Soviets, there's one in there that's my favorite, which is the people there. I'm sorry, guys, between you and me, which is about whatever number of you, there are people who push for more Soviet artillery. And again, this is a platoon level tactical game. You put all that artillery in, you won't have much of a game. However, the one response I got when I asked, especially armor leaders, to confirm the study that we had found about artillery's effectiveness against armor was, like, what's your greatest fear? And without thinking, this one armor company commander is like, artillery. Why? Because Soviet doctrine was to drop artillery and destroy a grid square. So I put in a card, grid square artillery, just one, in the solo game. because a grid square is basically a 7 hex diameter hex. It's kilometer by kilometer, basically. So yeah, if you really want it, you can put the. I put the card in a scenario or two, and it's solo, so you don't have to do it at all. But that's kind of like when people say, "Well, we want the real artillery." Okay, try that a couple times.
We did have a card, but I was overruled. They had one big mushroom on it, and that thing's got out of hand. And game
yeah,
over.
I can honestly say I overruled that. And again, with the excuse, it's a platoon level tactical game. What are you doing with nuclear weapons? So anyway, but battlefield events are to give that. It's almost a lock and load tactical flavor to it. There's a thing. There's one battlefield event where one of the Soviet leaders, even if they're not in play, they get put in play, and they do an ad hoc formation of anybody within 4 hexes of them from whatever other formation right then and there, which is kind of cool. It's a little cinematic, but there you go. It's all good. So you don't have to play with any of these cards, period. The base cards plus the offensive and defensive will give you a very good AEO experience, especially now that we have the additional, taking some of the load off of you guys and determining opportunity fire, determining load and unload. But the base game is basically the same. Can you use this with Storming the Gap? Absolutely, although the British cards won't make any sense. Can you use the original one with this? Yeah, but this has so much cooler stuff.
Yeah, it comes in the game now.
And it comes in the game now, so it's all going to be there, ready to go. You don't have to futz around with it or anything like that.
Okay.
All right.
I know
what else do you want me to talk about here?
Okay. This is basically going to get in Blood and Fury. It's got 8 counter sheets, 4 geomorphic maps, 14 player aid cards. Now, if someone counts the player aid cards, you're not going to find 14 there because you wouldn't be able to see anything. So that's where we did it. Jeff is working on the campaign, which I'll show you real quick for a second. Jeff and Black working with a nice system there. And these are the basically stuff we had. You notice you will get 4 red, 4 blue, and 3 green. I'm going to bypass the statistics. There's only 2 games. I don't know if you can buy more than one. Someone did ask the question, and I did see that go by. I just haven't got to it yet. I don't know if see a question more, but I know someone asked it. Anyway, I don't know if you can buy more than one during the campaign, but you can, I'm almost sure, buy more than one afterwards. If I find I can't, I'll put an option in to buy a second copy. Okay, these are your stretch goals. Okay, guys. The learning cards are just for the data cards. To be clear, the flight standards we showed you, the spiral bound rulebooks, there should be no question what that is. And of course, there's the audio book and PDF. Someone asked about the winter maps. I just don't want to put 4 more maps in the game because I don't want the box to be too full. Okay, based on all the stuff that's going in there now. All right. I may add them, but I don't think so. These are the add-ons. These are additional things you can buy. You don't need them to play Blood and Fury. One is Operation Red Gauntlet. Okay, I'm going to go into this real fast. It has 9 maps. You're only going to count 8 on here. Okay, and there's some screenshots of the different scenarios and a real close-up of the maps. Okay, to be clear, you get 8 individual maps that will make the big monster map. You can buy a one-piece map on canvas. It is not necessary. Plus, there's an extra map for the map 9. The scenarios and the descriptions for what's here. We want to make this clear, too. The first 4 scenarios only require the ownership of Blood and Fury to play. But Scenario 5, which is called Operation Red Gauntlet, requires Blood and Fury, Storming the Gap, the expansion pack to play. Okay? Make sure you got a lot of caffeine. This is a big game. Jeff's been showing screenshots of it on the Facebook World at War group. I'm looking forward to this. I believe Jeff will be at WBC. I know he's going to be at WBC. And we got him a demo table. And I'm sure he won't leave there but to sleep and eat. And he said anyone can come by and jump in and play with them. So feel free to do that. Okay. How do I get on this? Close it. Okay. And again, the maps, you should know what they are. The artwork, it's just canvas artwork, guys. Just so you know, if you want to know what type of canvas and all this other stuff, It's all right there. Okay, it's how it's produced, what it's made from, the type of ink, as far as I can tell, we got from the printer. And there you go there. Okay, and the rest of this I'm going to kind of just skip because, again, that's the whole reason it's on the thing, but it's on the main page. Keith did go over in one of the videos that we now use in round, disrupted and all that for playability, isn't it, chiefing guys, and give some line of sight. Oh, the campaign game here. This is going to be a little bit different. I talked to Jeff about this compared to the Storm in the Gap one. It's going to have a lot less areas to go from because the only real complaint we got from it was kind of too many. So what you're seeing here in each white box are the map numbers that you're going to use. Okay, and if the numbers looks upside down or sideways, it's how the map is supposed to be arranged.
So that's your map configuration for that area.
Right. So it's always going to be pre-set up. It's not going to be a random thing now based on the maps. And pretty much he's got some rule changes and stuff. I'm not going to go that. We're going to say that when we got Jeff on board. Here's some more unit counters.
Yeah, if you don't know the unit counters by the time you get to the end of this game founder, I think we put it in there 2 or 3 times. I'm teasing. You can always ask questions.
All right, the core rules. The starter kit. Here's something that's changing. We're going to pull the starter kit out of the core rules. Okay? It's a free download. Version 2.2 will either be up tomorrow or it will be up right before we release or start the actual GameFound crowdfunding campaign. It's a free download, doesn't cost you anything. Look it all up. The reason is we're going to take the same rules and we're going to stick them in the starter kit. It'll have all the starter kit stuff. We're making it separate just so it matches Lock and Load Tactical and I believe Nations at War. You can't, now if you download it, it's free. You don't have to do anything. You have to make your own counters, put your own maps, and you can play test it if you don't want to. It is based on Storm in the Gap. I just want to make that clear. It is not based on Blood and Fury. What does that mean? Absolutely nothing as far as I'm concerned. You're just not going to get British units to play with. There is an option in the store, in the World at War series section, to buy it. It does not come with the rules. It's just the counters and the maps printed, so you don't have to. You're still going to need to download the rulebooks and read it, or buy a core rulebook if you really want to, but I really wouldn't recommend that just for the starter kit. If you're buying the game, don't waste your time with the starter kit because everything you're going to get is already in the game except it's for Storm in the Gap, guys.
There are learner scenarios in Blood and Fury. We have the same table we had in Storm in the Gap where it says these are your recommended one map learning scenarios. And the only difference between a learning scenario and any other scenario is you kind of don't want to put the battlefield event card in. And they're small. And that's the main thing. Same thing in Blood and Fury. We evaluated for starter scenarios. So that's why Scenario 2 ended up in the starter kit. Is because it's one of the learning scenarios from Storming the Gap. There are learning scenarios in here should you not get the starter kit itself.
Yes. And this is the companion book now. Okay, and when you can click on here right now, it'll take you to the library section. There's all kinds of stuff in the library section for World at War. How to start playing in 10 minutes, how to learn helicopters in 5 minutes. There's a lot of other material Nicholas and a lot of other people put together. This is for playing virtually. This is the actual game on Tabletop Simulator right now. It's the World at War starter kit again. Don't need anything. You can just go and play this if you own Tabletop Simulator. If you vassal, it doesn't have to be purchased. And again, you can play the starter kit as well. Okay, and this is not available yet, but we put it in there just to let you know we are having the designer, the programming team that is working on Nations at War and has done already released Lock and Load Tactical Digital. We'll be putting this on the computer for Mac and PC. It says coming 2022. I would roll the dice for that. Okay, and then the videos. The videos are just that. Some of the videos you've seen that we released last night. This will be on here. There's also Bootcamp by Gimpy. Again, it's the core rules. It doesn't matter what game it's for the most part. The thing with the die, the green die, we'll probably have to have them reshoot that. And pretty much the same. Now, I saw a lot of people complaining about the shipping. Okay, the shipping is really this. If it's a friendly shipping area, which is listed right there in your screen, guys, we're shipping the games to someone in those regions, and they're going to ship the games for us. Okay? So you should not have to pay VAT. You shouldn't have to get stuck with any extra customs. We've done this already with Second Chance Games. We have to use somebody new thanks to the breakup of them leaving the EU. Okay? We don't go to Brazil, Russia, or Ukraine. Ukraine we normally would, but obviously they're having issues there. Okay? And these are the rough things. Okay? These are coming from the warehouse. So if it's UK and we're shipping from here, it's roughly the same as shipping from the United States in the UK. Okay, so there you go. But there shouldn't be a VAT, and like I said, I try to clean it up. The delivery. Okay, part of the reason we've taken so long to get all these games down the pike that we've been doing Point Blank. Here's a bit of Harvest. We're already on the prototype phase of Here's a bit of Harvest from the printer, because we're giving her or them all the materials now. They're approving it, or they have already approved some of them of the stuff. So there's no hell. We have to go back and redesign this because the printer can't use it. Been there, done that for most of the stuff. Cards are good, etc. All right. So we're trying to get this here by the time right before we hit Christmas, at least in the U.S. It may take a little bit longer. But we overnight the packages to the UK from here, 2 days, 3 days. They're here from the US to the UK, and film the guys at Second Chance Games are awesome. And those guys move like lightning for us. Okay, so I'm pushing to have the game in people's hands before Christmas morning. Will that happen? I don't know. I can't guarantee it, of course, but we're getting a fast boat. We're scheduling all time for it, and the printer basically said once the the crowdfunding is done, within 30 to 40 days, we should have our prototype, and we should be good to go from day one. We will do exactly what we did at Point Blank. We'll show you the prototypes. We'll put videos online, and as they're producing it, we will put up the videos. So if you don't have to guess, where are we? We put them up as we go. Okay. Some people complain that, we took a little longer for stuff for Point Blank. It really was COVID, us having COVID, slowed us down. And then the area that the printer we're using, which is in China, someone did ask a question, it's not being printed in the States. It is not, for my lack of trying. Okay. It will be printed in China and sent over. We are not ordering 2,000 extra copies. If we get 1,000 sales, we're going to order like 1,200 games, or add the distributor sales into that and another 100, 200 games, because the warehousing and the issues with that are becoming pretty major for us, and that's a great way not to do that anymore. So if you want it, really, this is the time to get it. We consider if you do it during the campaign, you want to cancel, change your mind, add something, you're good. After the campaign is over, we consider all sales final, and we go right off to the printer for the speed. And the risk and challenges are pretty self-explanatory. I think you guys can, you know what we do. We know how we do it. So it's all there. And I'm just going to do any name. Okay. Here we go, Chris. Let me just close this out. Okay. So yeah, Blood and Fury will be printed in China. Okay. I believe we entered this one. Right now, I think there's only one. You can only print one. We're going to find out, I guess, in a week. Okay. I have to go with that one there. Here you go.
That's like the old SPI World War III. If you'd like to simulate global thermonuclear war, pour gasoline on the map and light the corner. Oh, here's a great question. So, World War 85 maps are a little over 13 by 19 inches, roughly 13 hexes by 23 hexes. So what you see in the background is pretty much, our background is a map.
Right. Now, the 22 or 56, that is the monster map, which is 8 maps.
8 of these 13 by 19s, 2 by 4 kind of thing.
but that's it's something you could definitely play on the card table. Be a little tight with all the play rates, but you can do it.
Oh, I wish it were closer to 11 by 17. No, when we enlarged the hexes, in order not to lose hexes, this is way back in the original redesign. In order not to lose hexes, the physical size of the paper had to increase. That's why we went from. I mean, it was 11 by 17, but that's why it went up to 13 by 19. Are you rolling a loaded dice? I don't know. I don't usually. I like to roll the aircraft machine ones that are perfectly balanced because it actually has a slight feel and changes the odds a little.
That's you, Keith.
Oh, yeah, it's Mike. No, it's a little bit less, I think, because the counters are 3/4 of an inch, just 0.75. The hexes, I believe, are 1 inch on the flats. I think you're right. They're 1 inch on the flats. Yeah.
Okay. Guys, anyone has any other questions? We will be doing, I'm sure something day before. We do plan to get Jeff on here to talk about the campaign game. Of course, you can feel free to ask questions there. Anyone have any other questions? Anything else?
Bueller.
Hey.
We're still here.
We're still here. So you got any questions for us? You shoot them away. Hope you're doing well, buddy. Okay.
Oh yeah, Mike Seeley's hosting World War 85 at Gen Con this August. So if you go, be sure and stop by. So yeah. He's our vassal designer, so he knows the game more intimately than most of us.
Yeah, his vassal models are excellent.
He's touched every piece, every side of every piece, every marker, every card.
Okay. Well, let us ask a question of you guys. Are you excited? Do you like this change? We're having everything in the box right off the top. You don't have to worry about a stretch goal outside of making the initial, what would you call it? Goal for the project to be successful. Everything's in the box besides the add-ons. We try to make the add-on something that you guys would like and have.
Oh, it's on GameFound.
It's on GameFound, buddy.
Mm-hmm.
Hold on. I guess I can do.
You should probably post that. Can you do that?
There you go.
Yeah, he's had a banner running.
Oh, there we go. It's got to be like the easiest banner for any kind of crowdfunding thing I've ever seen.
Yeah.
It doesn't have all sorts of codes and 32 digits and.
Okay, so I'll leave that on there. There is a sale going on, guys. I did. We got more questions. Hold on. Nope. Thanks for the update. Very much in favor of the new format. That's good. That's great. Thanks, guys. I mean,
what is the advantage? Oh, of having it all in the box? That's a David question.
Before we had it, the very first one we did, we had, hey, you got this game, then we gave you more maps, then we gave you more scenarios, and there was some solar cards and the data cards, and of course, the more it was funded, the more stuff we got, which caused us to, honestly, was very successful the first time for us, and we had to get a second box, which increased the shipping, so we planned everything to fit in this super thick box. I mean, I don't know if you guys can really see this, but if you see this box, I think it was Wayne. I may be wrong there, but somebody got a preview copy of this. It's the actual game from the shipment coming in, and he said, "Man, this is like the thickest box he's ever seen." I think it was Wayne who said that. And the reason we did it because we don't want the damn box to break. Okay, but there's a whole weight limit on what we can put in there, and so everything comes in the box. You get in the game day one or the last day. You don't have to worry about where we are in the campaign.
I'm reading. I'm trying to catch up on the comments.
Okay, hold
They're all
on.
for you, David.
Okay.
Yes, Mo, I am reading your comments. I'm just laughing on the inside.
Well, and by the way, when we did the box, we actually fit everything into the box. So technically, if you buy Operation Red Gauntlet, it comes in a Ziploc bag. It's not in a box, so you can stick it right inside your main game. Again, keeping everything together. Now, if you want to have counters and keep them in a separate box, then you would like one of our ammo kits, which comes with 3 of our deep dish counters trays that lock, and the box can be written on, so you can put down, hey, this is, Blood and Fury counters or whatever comes with it. Okay. Yes,
That's your die roll.
I don't want to know what that modifier is. Be careful.
Yeah, we don't offer a wife receipt. So, although maybe for $10 extra, we could come up with one that you can print out. This was only $12, honey. See,
a differential receipt.
Oh, the advantage of being on GameFound. I don't really think I really don't want to go into it because it will just cause controversy. But I don't need controversy. When I'm personally, I'm the guy who runs the company, was not happy with some of the things with Kickstarter. I'm not saying we won't use them again, but some of the I can't say we're not saying it, so I'm not saying it. Okay, guys.
But in addition, we found that the back end of the stuff that you guys don't see, the stuff that we as the developers and publishers see, was a lot easier on us in how the stretch goals work. In Kickstarter, if you hit the stretch goal, you have to manually go in and unlock the stretch goal. On GameFound, if you hit the stretch goal, it does it automatically for you. I mean, there's just a lot of little things like that in the back end of the program that we just found worked a little bit more advantageous for us.
No, it does set up much easier. I mean, I edited both the draft section and the campaign section last night. Now, it took me 4 or 5 hours because I was being meticulous, make sure I didn't delete something or make a mistake. But that was pretty painless. You can't do that at all on Kickstarter. Yeah, and that's exactly what we wanted to avoid because we literally had designed and did all this work ahead of time. So,
it's anywhere from 15 seconds on up. That's just StreamYard. And it depends on which program you're coming from, be it YouTube or Twitch or Facebook. Those all have different intermittent delays. So, yeah, I mean, technically, Keith, David, and I are all talking to each other live. Your guys seeing it. Everyone else is seeing us, 20 seconds in the past. So.
Yeah, I used to have a red button here to cut them off when they'd say something goofy, but I can't do that with this system.
How do you keep motivated working on a game so long? That's a great question.
I have a very simple answer to that.
Yeah, you have one and I have one. What's yours?
Alcohol. Copious amounts of adult libations. If you're drunk, you can't tell how much time has passed.
Not easily.
But my solution, I'll give the my real world answer, which is build a team. Storming the Gap was much more thinner on the ground in terms of people because we didn't know what it was going to do. Once that happened, we had a lot of enthusiasm. And Jeff Schulte has been in since the beginning, basically. But adding in Nicholas Michon and Susan Davis, and our pre-formatters, Thomas O'Neill and Nuno Castillo, and the rest of the people who I ask for things to do. I might only ask one thing, but it might be something that would have taken me a month that somebody does in 3 days because they're happy to help. They're on the team. And that it really is many hands make light work. I mean, it's because it's a lot of stuff. It's a lot of stuff.
Let me see. Well, I'm going to be honest with you. We have purposely designed this to fit in a flat rate box and there's an equivalent of something like this. I know in England. I don't know about Europe for sure, but and it is actually going to save everyone money by us doing that. That's why the shipping is so cheap for such a heavy box. Having 2 boxes actually can cost you more because of the size of the stupid box as well as the weight with the post office. Okay, we actually tripled the cost of sending tubes. Okay, the one-piece map, because it was so big, when we printed it the first time, it was 1.25 inch over their limit, and it went from a $14 or $15 shipping rate to $44. I am not exaggerating that at all. So, I would not piggyback it. I think you'll end up losing money there, buddy, just so you know. But we're going to, again, when we get everything in there, we're going to test them all out. We did actually take 6 of these games, put them in flat rate box, put them all around, and mail them across the country to people just to see how well they survive. This is literally like 9.5 pounds. This, I think 10 pounds is the maximum for medium flat rate box. So we don't want to ship more than 1 box and make sure everything will fit in the box or in the box that we're shipping in to avoid any additional charges on the shipping. See, now I know I'm right. Look at that.
It's tragedy.
Yeah, the ammo crates, I think they're pretty much almost gone out. I think there's less than 100 of those. Those have sold extremely well. The top of the trays lock in. Maybe throw them down a flight of stairs. You're on your own, buddy. But if you drop it casually, it's not going to pop the lid off. It's not going to go over the whole place.
I just got
that one's for you.
I needed some.
Well, just so you know, I did send a message on the Kickstarter to everybody who did support us for Storming the Gap. Let them know that this was available. It's on GameFound with the links. So hopefully anyone who was interested will be notified. And, here's the thing. We did have that discussion, too. Mike, here's the conclusion. Nobody goes to Kickstarter and goes, oh, my God, it's a war game. and start ordering. We actually joked about it quite a bit. It's because you guys come to us, and we're posting to tell you guys because it's your hobby. It's the thing you love to do in your free time. So as long as we get out there and tell you guys it's coming, for the most part, everyone will know. And is that after, if you miss, the crowdfunding, you can late pledge it. So I'm not really worrying about losing too much. And like I said, anybody who did order World of Warcraft 5 should know it's out there now. Okay, got that one. Trying to get the expansions and add-ons ordered from any game nowadays. The pain in the butt.
There you go.
Yeah, that's exactly why we did it. Okay.
Laughter is good. That's true, but for this, for when we were doing the redesign and the tear down and the rebuild of World War, to make World War 85, we really didn't have any counter sheet limits because we knew we needed to get back out there with what the game
do now.
Yeah, well, that was the big deal. So that after all this experience that David had with the shipping and the weight of and having 2 boxes, and that became, Keith, you have a limit on the number of counter sheets. Well, I had spreadsheets laid out for multiple games, and I'm looking at going, okay, we have to take a couple nationalities out of here.
Yeah, it did happen where you would have had a box just of counter sheets, guys.
Right. It was, Devin and I were talking about this yesterday because, Blood and Fury didn't start out as just, the British, the West Germans, a smattering of Americans, and a lot of Soviets. It started out with the East Germans and the Danish and the Dutch and the Belgians
and the
Poles all in one box. And
I'll be at the zombies and the werewolves.
That's that other version.
You notice I go into palpitations when you do that. Because I had to do the surgery on it. So we had to take that out, and we ended up going, all right, well, what is in Blood and Fury? It's really about the British. But then Jeff Schulte's like, why do we have the East Germans again when we already have a healthy contingent of East Germans in Storming the Gap? what we really need is a threat from the Soviets. And if we give the East German counters to the Soviets, now you've got pretty much, a division, or at least multiple regiments. And that's some serious stuff, which also gave us more breathing room in terms of the support weapons. So we could give you support weapons for the Soviets that you haven't seen before. Not all of them, but some of them. You get to see some of the more advanced anti-tank guided missiles. So it's one thing to have your T-80 out there. It's another thing to have T-80 out there that has a spandrel. You're going to think twice because you're like, why is he able to shoot back at me at all? Let alone with something so effective. It adds a flavor that, that Storming the Gap doesn't have. I mean, the one thing we're proudest of is, that I'm proudest of, is that every nationality in each game has its own flavor. So the Soviets in Blood and Fury feel more like the North German Plain, where it's really a serious matter. Fulda Gap, it's a serious matter, but it's a lot of terrain to defend. It's just there's not enough guys. Everything has its own flavor. So, but we split it out into Blood and Fury, and the game will be coming up, which is We Shall Hold. And that's going to have the Belgians, the Dutch, and then we're like, oh, that's where we should put the Canadians. So the Belgians, the Dutch, Canadians, and more Soviets. And I know there's people who would like, why can't we have more pact forces? Like, there actually weren't a high proportion of other pact forces on these fronts. You get to, Red Lightning is the name of our, the working title for our Scandinavian scenarios, which includes, the Danes, the Swedes, the Norwegians, and the Poles. And Soviets, but it'll probably be more Soviet special forces and some ground forces, and then we're going to have the Poles. So, I'm sorry, yeah, in the Scandinavian scenario, yes. So that we kind of moved things geographically to where they're supposed to be. But then somebody, like, I think it was me, said, well, what about the Italians?
The Romanians,
Nicholas
the
Michon is handling the
Hungarians.
French. I'm like, where are the Italians? Every platoon level tactical game gets only so far in World War III, and then the Italians never show up. And I'm like, well, that's not fair. And I went looking in my book of what they had, and they have some interesting equipment. They really do. So I'm like, what do we do? And Nicholas Michon steps up to the plate because he's doing the French module, which the working title there is Never Give In. And he's like, well, what about if we did like the Hungarians, the Romanians, and the Italians? And I'm like, oh, okay. So that we're toying with that. That's not a formal thing at all. There's a lot of Europe involved. But so we ended up with this limit on counter sheets. So it's like, all right, so we have the same number of counter sheets in Blood and Fury as we had in Storming the Gap. So we had to make sure we had enough Soviets to actually, be a good opposition there, have the volume that they have. Now there is one more counter sheet because there's campaign counters for the campaign game that's coming in Red Gauntlet. But hopefully that will not. But Operation Red Gauntlet.
Yeah, but no, there's no counters in Red Gauntlet. It's all the counters.
I guess I'm sorry. Maybe it is one more. It is one more counter sheet. It's an 8th counter sheet that has the campaign markers.
It's listed already on the site. I updated.
Right. It has the campaign markers. So there's 8 counter sheets. Instead of 7 counter sheets.
Blood and Fury, the campaign, the counters, etc.
Right. So, but that's can't really put more counter sheets in there and have all the rest of the stuff. And the decks of formation cards and the data cards and the solo cards. It's like it's all got to fit in the box.
Oh, the one thing, Keith, did you on the data cards leave a spot for them to put down the miniature things like we did in?
Yes, I showed them that. Yeah, the lower left corner is basically we gave them conversion factor because that seemed to be what a lot of people were missing. And like, well, how do you do the conversion factor? Well, the conversion factor is the ground scale. So 1 hex, which is represented on the counter, translates to 150 yards, which is about 165. I rounded up a little, 165 meters. And you can be as exact as you want on that. So they can take that, anybody who does miniatures does math, I'm hoping.
Yeah, I would think so.
So you say, all right, well, if 1 inch equals 100 yards, then 1 hex equals how many hexes, and then you translate the number, and they can do all that math, but then they plug it in for that particular unit, and they're good to go. Or they keep a chart with the conversion factor, and they can do the math on the fly, or they can use their ruler.
Hey,
with it.
Viper Dave, let's try to back it up. Yeah, it doesn't come online for another, 7 days, I think?
Yeah, it's live next Monday at 11 or 1 Eastern time.
I think it's noon Mountain.
Mountain.
Yeah, it's 11 my time and 10 for Devin.
But thank you. Come back on Monday.
Yeah. We have to get our coffee before this starts.
Yeah. Come back a week from tomorrow, and it should be ready to go.
Okay.
What would follow on reinforcement look like for? Okay, that's actually a great question. We can make a Category A formation into a Category B formation by simply replacing its formation card. That's why we designed it the way we did. So you could have the same set of, say, T64s. I'm just going to make it up here because T64s would probably be, it probably would be second line. But if I have a formation card that says I've got a morale training value of 6, and I've got a morale, a command range of 4 for the HQ, and 3 if it's reduced, I can substitute that card. I can say, well, my morale training's still 6. I really would loathe to take it to 5, but we could. But maybe their command range when the HQ is full strength is only 3 hexes. So that's a number of units in an even smaller area to stay in command. And one of the things I like the best about about what we've done with Out of Command is that you're never forced to be in command range. You can always roll outside of command range and still be in command. Take your chances, but you can have a separate force that's just like, make what progress you can. And if they roll and they're in command, they're going to move just like any other unit, and they're not going to be within the command range of the HQ. But the formation cards allow us to redescribe the same set of units. Also, probably if we kick in second lines, we're going to add in like more T62s and more T55s. Still, that equipment, matched against 105s it's not going to, it's really hard to fight that. It really is, simply because of the nature of doctrine and the nature of the Soviets just are not as responsive as quickly. You can do a whole lot with a NATO company with 2 formation activations and a morale training at 7. And you can tear apart, 10 T55 platoons who have, a morale training of 6 and a, command radius of 3, which may be as it should be. So the key there is if we brought in second line formations, again, we're all about scenario design. You can make a scenario where NATO outguns Soviets, period, but you got to make the victor conditions say NATO's going to win this. If you lose less as the Soviets, you'll win the scenario, kind of a thing.
All right, someone asked somewhere else here. Originally, we had planned to maybe release 2 games at once. It wasn't a set thing. It was something we were discussing, but we went against it based on the cost. Thanks to the inflation economy now, it just doesn't, some of you guys are going to have a hard time with this price. Can you imagine doing 2 of them?
And my sanity.
Oh, we can always replace that. Now, the 3 games in the running, we do not know which one will be next. I'm going to officially say that. It could be Keith's America Breached. It could be We Shall
Never Give In.
Never Get In.
Could be We Shall Hold.
Or We Shall Hold.
Could be the unnamed Romanian, Hungarian, Italian game.
Okay. So those are the 3 that are in the running. We will decide which will be next. There's no right or wrong way to do it necessarily.
Right.
So, just to answer that, I do not see that hidden until late this year or early next year, Viper Dave, just because it's, the guys programming the system is programming it right now for Nations at War because the programming team bailed on us and again left us hanging. And I just said, hey, we're going to use you. We want to use all the features that we've seen in Lockman Tactical Digital. Everyone seems to like that as it is. And then they're going to convert that into World at War 85.
I like that too. Yeah, and that's one of the big deals about onboard indirect fire, especially the Soviet formations that have like a 2S1, is they have a minimum range of 7 hexes for indirect fire. So do you put your HQ with him trailing back where, you can fire him, but you also don't get an HQ bonus for him. And then fire him, and then the front line guys have to take their chances if they're supposed to keep the advance moving, or do you stay with the advanced forces, and whenever the 2S1 happens to be in command, you get some fire, which is also another way of simulating indirect fire at the level of regimental without having to have complex rules.
All right, gentlemen. The next thing I have for you is someone's asking, what will the next crowdfunding game be? It should be First Victories, Wellington versus Napoleon.
Oh, yeah, looking forward to
Okay, and we'll be talking about that not this week.
Come on.
It's not even next week, but we will be putting some stuff up in the store. There's only one of me posting all this stuff, and Blackwell, I can't give him legally any more alcohol. So, let's see. Is that a question? Okay, so there's no other questions, guys. We will be doing, like I said, a little bit more frequent show. If you remember, I think Keith had written up some articles on movement and stuff like that. But listen, keep the questions coming. If you got a complaint, you got an idea, we're probably the most approachable game company I think on the planet right now. Okay,
we don't bite.
You know, well, we might bite, but it's always been fun.
Sorry.
But check out the Facebook page. We are over on Constant World. We're on the Constant World Forum. We're on what else? We're on that game
Discord.
Discord. Yeah.
MeWe.
Yeah. Oh, and thank you for your votes. Because of your votes, we have stopped doing the Lock and Load summer swimsuit calendar. That will not be coming out. Okay.
I was so looking forward to fitting in that Speedo.
If you want to call that fit, okay.
And I was looking forward to some very dark sunglasses.
I definitely fit in the Speedo more than I should have fit in the Speedo, but I fit in the Speedo.
Okay, guys.
Lots of complaints.
Well, that might be a stretch goal. If we get a certain level, we won't make the calendar. So, a little bit different type of marketing strategy. Well, guys, we want to thank you for coming by, listening to us, and for all those who get us afterwards. Again, check out the GameFound page. It's at the bottom. It starts in a week from today. It's Sunday now, July 17th, so Monday it'll start. Any questions, anything you have, bring it up. And this is the part of the show where Devin dances and everyone waves goodbye. Until next time, guys, which won't be that long.
Well, that is all you have for this episode. Keep gaming, and may God bless you and keep you until next time. On the air is a Lock and Load Publishing production.